This is Fans on the Run, a podcast made by, for, and about Beatles fans. And now, here's your host, Ethan Alexanian.
All right, everyone, welcome to Fans on the Run. This will be, well, I don't know if it'll be the first episode uploaded, but it's certainly being the first one recorded. It's been a very strange time we're in right now. Everyone's stuck in their houses and hopefully listening to a lot of good podcasts. And of course, the one thing the world needs is another Beatles podcast, because there's just so many of them, or so few of them, I should say. But the main reason for me wanting to make this is because this is a topic that I would listen to a podcast about this. Unfortunately, this topic has not been made yet, so I am the one who has to make the podcast that I would listen to. And really, we're just going to be talking not just specifically about the Beatles, but we're talking to Beatles fans about their personal experiences, their stories, their connections to the Beatles. And of course, who better to start all of this than the man who introduced me to the Beatles all the way back in 2010 when I was 8. Will you please welcome my Uncle Paul Campbell?
Well, Ethan, thanks a lot, pal. Thanks for having me on your brand new program. I'm very excited to be interviewed by you this evening.
Thanks for coming on the show.
I love the title of your show, too, Fans on the Run. That's terrific. Very funny. Very good.
It was a toss-up between that and In My Life.
Oh, good. That would work. Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah. So, what do you remember about introducing me to the Beatles? We're going to talk about me a little bit.
Yeah, very good. Well, why not? Of course, the host comes first. I can't remember specifically. I mean, I've always been a fan, and I knew you were a music fan. You were heavily into a Michael Jackson phase there for quite a while, and he's a terrific artist, too. I'm a big fan of him as well. And maybe somehow in our discussions about him and his career and how they had done duets together, and maybe that's where it began. Leading from there to Beatledom and Paul McCartney and such. So
the one thing that really sticks out in my mind about the early days of me being a Beatles fan is you introduced me to the conspiracy theory of Paul McCartney dying in a car crash in 1966.
Oh, yeah.
That's what really set me over the top and got me to start collecting records, which you have fueled that addiction.
Right.
I have sitting in front of me right now the first 3 Beatles records you gave me.
Oh, good. Very good.
Twist and Shout, Rubber Soul, and Magical Mystery Tour. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, that's all right. We'll take turns. But I think you're talking about the conspiracy thing. I think I pointed out that business with the cover of Sgt. Pepper, where you use the reflective edge of a knife to read the he die.
Yeah, and you can't really you can't do that on a CD or a JPEG.
Yeah, right. It's too small. That's right. Good point.
And I'm like, wow, you can only do this with the LPs.
Right. Yeah, well, they had such classic, iconic LP covers too. They're beautiful pieces of art, really. So
of course,
they set a standard that way. So.
Yeah. It wasn't just packaging anymore.
Right. No, exactly. Right.
It was an art statement in and of itself.
Correct. They come from that sort of school background, and they would have had some input into that, I'm sure, and at least would have wanted it to be that way. So, true. Very true.
Yeah. But yeah, you have really fueled my record collection.
Right on, buddy.
With all the that British White Album.
Right.
All those, it was those 3 records he gave me that really set me on that path.
Got you triggered. Excellent. That's good. Well, it's a lovely journey to follow. I enjoyed it when I was probably about exactly your age is when I would have been getting excited about Beatles myself. So.
I always get really nostalgic for the time when I first became a Beatles fan and everything felt new.
Exactly. I can identify with that 100%.
Because it's not like now where I can tell you, maybe the entire road crew of the Beatles' 1964 U.S. tour. Back then, it's just hey, they had this song called Strawberry Fields. That's really cool.
Yeah, each album and track order was a revelation as I acquired them and learned each one and came to enjoy each one. I thought it was a lot. It took a couple of years. I got them bit by bit, and it was just wonderful every time to open the new package and listen to an album. So I know that feeling.
One last tangent about me. I've told Mark Lewison this story, and he got a kick out of it. What really set off some sparks in my head was Mom had a copy of the Blue Album on CD.
Right. Okay.
And it was like in this box beside the couch. And so I grabbed it, put it in my rinky-dink little CD player, and then Sgt. Pepper came on.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then,
Is that how it starts? Is that the first track?
I think there's a couple before, but then it was Sgt. Pepper, and then how it just transitions seamlessly into With a Little Help from My Friends.
Right.
I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, these are two different songs?
That's cool.
Anyways, enough about me. Let's talk about
there's
you.
never enough about you, Ethan. Come on. Sounds good.
All right, so when did you first discover the Beatles?
Well, being someone born in the year of 1962, and here's one little fact I'm always proud to point out. I'm born on June the 5th, 1962, and my understanding is the Beatles' first professional recording with George Martin at EMI was on June the 6th, 1962. So my sensibility is that they waited till I was in the world before they started their actual professional recording career. So that's my point. So I'm exactly as old as the Beatles' album career.
That's the reason they got turned down by Decca and such.
That's right. You see, if I'd been premature,
they needed your energy in the world.
I think that's a logical explanation. Yeah. So anyway, being a kid growing up in that era, of course, I would have been hearing Beatles songs on the radio in the background of whatever was happening, and would have been vaguely aware of them. And one of the earliest memories I do have is my brother Danny, or Uncle Dan, coming home from college, and he came home with a big reel-to-reel tape recorder. It was sort of pre-cassette tape recording time. Somehow we had property of this. I think it was from the college radio station. I think he was a student at Bishop's University in Lennoxville, Quebec, and he came home with this reel-to-reel, and he had a tape that had Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane on it. And so he was playing this for us back in, 67, and so I would have been 5, I guess. And I was, anyway, mesmerized by watching the big wheels turning around and hearing the songs, which were striking to me even then at that really young age.
And that was your first ever kind of
I would presume,
cognizant,
I think so. I mean, I didn't know, those are the Beatles, but it's music. I do. I kind of somehow strangely remember that moment. I have that vision in my mind in the living room and seeing this.
Of the reel-to-reel playing.
Yeah, right.
Playing the best AA side of all time.
Well, tell me about it. Exactly. Fantastic pieces of music. And then subsequent to that, growing up in our home back in the Gaspé Peninsula in Quebec, in the rural setting we were always out playing in the backyard. And my sister Alice was an avid pop music lover. And she had all the 45s, playing on a little plastic battery-powered record player. All of us kids, neighborhood kids, cousins, friends, we'd be in the backyard running around, playing tag, whatever games were happening, and the music would be in the background, this little record player playing. And I know one of the records she had was Hello, Goodbye. So I do remember that being an audio soundtrack for my, I guess, summer of, is that 68? That's still 67, right?
Yeah.
68. Yeah, 67, yeah. So those are maybe the 3 songs I would first be really consciously aware of. But becoming a super fan, that came later when I was a teenager. And I'm going to say, how old are you right now, Ethan? You're,
I'm 17.
17, okay. So
Don't get too ahead of yourself, because there's like,
right.
I'll just jump into the...
Oh, well, go ahead. Yeah,
okay, just for the viewers at home, I have a list of 5 or 6 questions that I want to keep this structured like a conversation, but I don't want to get lost. So, what was your first Beatles album or record?
Well, let me back up just 1 minute, because I can. The one other thing I would say about being introduced to the Beatles. I really owe it all to this revelationary moment, which I'm going to guess is when I was like 14. So what year is that? That's like 74, 75, somewhere in there.
Didn't you tell me you remember seeing Alice and her friend with a copy of Abbey Road?
Well, that's true too. Alice, my sister Alice, when she was away at college, came home for a weekend with a friend of hers, a roommate maybe, or just a dear friend, a girl named Jane, really sweet, lovely person who brought a bunch of records to play while they were visiting. And had those two Beatles records, had Abbey Road and had the White Album. And somehow I gleaned onto those and was listening to them. And she was kind enough to give them to me at the end of her visit. So I had copies that, were brand new to me and very excited about them. Beautiful music. But even a little before that, what had happened was my closest friend, who's named Chuck Campbell, no relation, but Chuck Campbell, who lived back at home. His name is Charles Campbell now. He doesn't go by Chuck. But he had come up with the Red and the Blue, so the two double albums.
Yes.
Sometime at that point in time, he came to visit, stayed overnight once, and played those for me. And I can tell you, it was one of those moments in your life where you know something is changing and you're discovering something fantastic, and literally life-changing. It was so exciting. The sequence of those songs, how they all sounded so fresh and exciting, how they progressed. From one idea to the next, how they advanced and, clear to me, and their technical ability and the recording technology and all these things. The sequence from the beginning of that to the end, the beginning of the Red to the end of the Blue, is just completely mind-blowing. And, I fell in love with that group and their music right then at that moment. I made a cassette tape out of it just by putting the little handheld cassette device up to the speaker and made my own copies, which I listened to incessantly for months on end.
How
before
old
I
were you when?
I'm going to guess. I'd have to work it out. Maybe 13 or 14. So the summer of '74.
Bootlegger.
So yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah, I had great technology. I used to eliminate stray sounds. I put the tape deck in front of the speaker, and only one speaker, so I was only getting half the stereo anyway. And I put a blanket over them both to muffle the sound so that I didn't get like lawnmowers in the background or something. I thought I was being so high tech. But anyway, that's how I initially began playing their music all the time. And those two records, I owe it all to Chuck Campbell, dear friend.
And
Hi,
you
Chuck,
owe it all
listening?
to the Red and the Blue.
And the Red and the Blue. They were mind expanding artifacts. Let's call them that. Fantastic art, and really changed my life in a lot of ways. Made me a lifetime music lover. Eventually a musician, and all because of those two records. So,
in terms of actual albums, what was the first proper album you had?
So I would have gotten those two from my sister Alice's friend Jane, and then I began to buy them. Locally if I could find them, but they weren't all available. You know the stories I've told you before about that copy of Meet the Beatles, or no, the second album. What's the second album? With the Beatles. And back at home in extreme rural Quebec, I found an actual British pressing and copy of that album. Yeah, on a rack in a little, not even a music store, a little gift shop or something. And that's one of the first ones I bought for sure. And very, very, I'd love to know the story of how the heck this record wound up there. It doesn't even make any sense. It was an import from England.
It was
stuck in a French-Canadian town.
I took a look at it the last time I was at your house. It's a 1969 pressing.
Pressing, okay. So even then, it would have had to have been kicking around for 5 or 6 years before I picked it up. I have it in my hand right now in front of me. But the real British thing, anyway.
Yeah.
So. That was, I love that record. That's a beautiful record. One of the great opening tracks on any album, if you ask me. It won't be long. It just bursts with energy,
See,
it's
that's why I feel like us Canadians got the better end of the deal than the U.S. because they had to deal with the Meet the Beatles, and it starts off with, I think it's I Want to Hold Your Hand. It starts off with.
Right. We had some weird hybrids
song.
too.
It's a great
I have some
song.
of those. You've seen the weird hybrids I have too, though. I have one called Twist and Shout.
Oh, yes. That was one of the first ones you gave me.
Oh, okay, there you go. Well, but that's a Canadian one only too, isn't it?
Yeah. Wait,
its own
let me look at
track
that.
listing.
The track listing is basically the Please Please Me album minus
Plus some singles.
It's it doesn't have it doesn't have I Saw Her Standing There, and it added From Me to You and She Loves You.
Exactly right. I'm looking at that right now on my copy here too. So it's a strange hybrid. And then also the album called Long Tall Sally.
That's a weird one.
Which is a weird one too. And again, it's a Canadian shuffle. I don't think it's American. I think it's a Canadian product. Yeah, and look, I'm looking at the credits on the back. Canadian album production by someone named Paul White.
Yeah,
so
he was the president, I think, of Capitol Records Canada.
Oh, okay. So I came across these in a ragtag kind of way, and then also eventually your grandfather, my dad, who was chairman of the local school board for many long years, about 20 years actually, and he used to travel to Montreal for school board meetings, province-wide school board meetings a lot of the time.
Yes.
And almost every month at a certain point in time. And in those years, he was traveling there frequently, so I would ask him to pick me up one album each time he traveled. So over the course of a year, I think I assembled the whole set of Beatles records one by one. I'd give him a very specific title. He'd pop into a music store on St. Catharines and bring it home for me every time. Dear, dear father. And so that's how I assembled it.
Do you remember which one was the first one he brought back for you?
It'd be hard to say. I can't remember specifically. I can remember, for instance, when he brought Rubber Soul home.
Hello?
And again, when he brought Rubber Soul, I would, I'd run to the record.
I just cut out for a second.
Oh, okay. Still there?
Yeah, go back to...
I hear you fine.
Go back to the start of, you said, Rubber Soul?
Sure.
Or he got...
Yeah, so he... Yeah, that's certainly one of the earliest ones. And the whole procedure would be he'd buy the album, he'd come home on the train, I'd meet him at the station almost, and say, okay, hand it over. And I'd run home and tear the plastic off and put it on the turntable.
Oh, you tore the plastic off.
I know. I wasn't a collector back then, see? That's why mine are all scuffed up, and yours are so pristine. But anyway.
Not all of mine are so pristine. The ones I got from you.
Well, exactly, because they were hard-worked records, boy. They got quite a lot, and they carried around the college stripes. Rooms. Oh yeah, they've been carted in milk cartons from place to place over the decades.
Now they've earned their luxury retirement and
that's right in a curated environment. The most exciting album I ever put on in my whole life was Revolver, and I can remember this moment really specifically, Ethan. I was visiting a friend in Montreal. This is a few years later. Yes. So I was in college in Quebec. I went to Cégep in Lennoxville, Quebec, and I'd go to visit a friend in Montreal. And
just for the viewer, or just for the listeners at home, Cégep is Quebec's
college level
equivalent of
like a community
12.
college. Sort of community college. It's away from home. I was hundreds of miles from home, staying in a dorm.
Yes.
And meeting, learning a lot about music there too from other people I was meeting, learning about whatever Bruce Springsteen and Steely Dan and other bands I came to love, but still being a Beatle nut. And I went into Montreal and picked up Revolver. It might have been even a little earlier than that.
And you hadn't heard Revolver up to this point?
I had not heard it, no, start to finish or anything like that. And I took it back to his apartment. He was gone for the day. I put it on. I can still remember the day, the sunshine coming in the window of the high-rise apartment and putting this thing on and just like being amazed from start to finish of the perfection of this record, the great pop songwriting, the diversity, the rockers and the ballads, and of course culminating with the greatest piece of recorded pop music in history to my tastes, which is Tomorrow Never Knows.
Exactly.
And feeling like, I can't believe how good this is.
It still holds up to this day.
Well, number one record of all time. I'll tell anyone that anytime.
Yeah.
I have 100 number two records, and I have one number one. And that's Revolver.
It's any time I ask someone what their favorite Beatles album, I always make sure to say, remember though, there is one correct answer, and I will chastise you if you don't say.
There, now that's a wise man. That's good. That's good.
Because Revolver is the best Beatles album.
I would have to say that they're just hitting their peak so beautifully. They're all their songwriting is at maximum intensity. They're still like highly energetic and fun.
They brought everything they did well with Rubber Soul.
Yeah.
And got rid of the things that made Rubber Soul kind of boring to me.
Well, there you go. I would never say those words out loud, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's more energetic, and then there's experimentation.
They
There's
replaced the folk with LSD.
Right. Gotcha, right. Yeah, good point. There's lots of experimentation on there. Great sonic experimentation on many of the songs. So,
did you know the first song recorded for that album was, believe it or not, Tomorrow Never Knows?
That's right. Well, on the anthology, you get to hear that really weird first take, which is like just a drone. That's not that interesting, but interesting to hear.
But the Beatles had just come off their 1965 world tour.
Yeah.
And so they pop into EMI, and I'm guessing they're expecting to put out another, We Can Work It Out, but then they record this monster piece.
A monster piece, good word. Yeah, gorgeous thing. Anyway, I mean, it still sounds like, I always say it sounds like music from the future to me still today, So that beat, when that beat hits and those seagulls start squawking and all that psychedelic swirling, and then Lennon's voice on the mountaintop, and it's just entrancing, I still love it all the pieces. It's in my high school yearbook favorite song,
Really?
Oh yeah. It's on record. So, hasn't changed. So anyway, that's how I assemble these records, one after another, each one a revelation, each one so exciting and pleasing.
Out of curiosity, which one, if you remember, was the last one for you to find?
It was probably Hey Jude. Probably about that another hybrid. Is that Canadian only, or is that also in America?
That's American.
Yeah, so it might have been that. That sort of filled in all the blanks at the end, I think.
Yeah.
Was that one. And I love it as an album in a weird way, even though doesn't make sense as an album. But you sort of get used to the sequence and think, yeah, that's pretty good. I always liked the cover. I thought the cover was great.
Oh yeah. Well, it's a great cover.
Yeah.
Now, were you just getting the albums? Because I have a few singles that came from you.
Right. Yeah, right. At that point in time, there was nowhere for me to buy the singles. I guess if I was in Montreal, which I used to visit fairly frequently, visiting my friend there, my friend John Plant. Mm-hmm. Dear friend John, if you're listening, how are you? John taught me more about music than I'll ever forget, of all kinds, pop and classical and everything. But if I was visiting him, I might stop up and pick up, because I think I gave you a couple of singles, the paper,
yes.
The picture covers, yeah. That would have been just a handful that I'd ever bought of singles, because albums were fine by me. But I know you've got a beautiful collection of all manner of singles. They're really cool. So.
It's growing slowly. Mm-hmm. It's not as big as I'd like it to be, but It's bigger than most.
Well, there you go, girl. There's lots of time left to keep collecting.
Oh yeah, I'm only 17.
There you go, dude. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I would describe.
This is a very off-topic tangent.
Okay, sure.
Yesterday, we kind of broke a little bit of the coronavirus rules. I had some money to spend, and so Mom felt bad for us being locked in for so long.
Cooped up for so long, yeah.
So
it's 4 weeks now. Yeah. It's going on 5.
It's crazy. So there's a guy on Facebook who is a dealer at record shows, and he had a copy of Days of Future Past by the Moody Blues, an original British copy.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I picked that.
Your Aunt Alice had that record. I remember it being in the house, She had lots of cool records.
Impassioned lovers, wrestlers one. Senior citizens wish they were young.
That sounds like Spinal Tap.
It does. No one knows who they were or what they were doing. All that remains is the legacy of Stonehenge.
There we have it.
Speaking of Spinal Tap, I'm assuming you've heard it. Have you heard the Troggs tapes?
I don't think I have heard them. Yeah, they're legendary sort of studio background talk stuff. Is that what they are?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never heard them.
You showed me the Birds studio.
Right. That mystery track on the Birds reissue album of not Sweetheart of the Rodeo, the other one. Anyway,
the Notorious Bird Brothers.
Correct. Notorious Brothers.
But this was straight up inspiration for the scene in Spinal Tap where they're in the studio fighting.
Okay.
It's your fucking wife.
Oh, careful with language on your podcast. Careful.
It doesn't matter.
Might have to edit that. No, I don't think it matters either.
No,
not a bit.
It's my podcast.
I don't give a. Oh, sorry, I won't say that.
It's not.
I'll mention I've made some notes here. I made some notes before we talk. Let me mention one other thing. You know that Rarities album?
Yes.
And the Rarities album has the Penny Lane version,
Yes.
which is the Canadian-only version with the extra trumpet trill at the end.
It's not the Canadian only, but it was on, like,
I thought it was.
It was a Capitol Records promo single.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, but I thought it was the version that Canadians heard on the radio, because I distinctly remember the last trumpet part. From
No,
when I
it would
was
have
little
been
somehow.
like a radio, like you would have heard it on
good,
the radio.
Right. Okay. So I was always wondering, like, am I wrong about that? But I did remember that when I finally got to hear the Rarities album. I said, that is what I remember. So I wasn't wrong. There you go. Just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah. That Rarities album, I still don't get why they haven't reissued it.
Yeah. Or at least incorporated it all in with the anthology. That would have been plausible.
Although I think at this point in time, they're all available in some form or another.
Digitally, yeah. I presume, why not? Why hold back?
I think they all are.
Yeah.
Because some of the stuff, like I think See Leap Deek is on there. That's not hard to find anymore. It's on Past Masters.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the German ones, yeah. Where did I just hear? Oh, you know what I just watched on the video was the film Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah, and it's called Give Me a Hand.
Yeah, they use it. That's great. I think that's really, really clever. So,
Don't
and
they
then
also
it's
use
Bowie singing Heroes in German too, which I knew about that track too. Yeah. So that was good.
Oh, wow, we're very off topic.
Well, not really. One thing leads to another in the music world. You're allowed to roam.
Yeah. So that was your first period of being a Beatles fan.
That's right.
Now you've told me.
Oh, you know what? One other thing I'll just mention simultaneously to getting my first Beatles records, probably from this girl Jane, the White Album and Abbey Road. Alice detected how much I was liking Beatles, and at that time, Cracker Box Palace was on the radio in Canada. George Harrison's track from 33 1/3. And so that would make it 77, I think.
76, I think.
76? Okay, yeah, so I'm not too sure. But anyway, because she knew I loved that song, she bought me the album. So, like, my first contemporary album I ever owned was 33 1/3 by George Harrison, which I'm really fond of, too. I think it's a really nice record.
It's a great song.
Yeah.
And that whole 33 1/3 album it's a little quirky, but I like it.
Yeah. It's got a certain tone
this
and
song,
feel. Yeah. His response to
the snarkiest song ever written.
It is, but in tongue in cheek too.
Oh yeah.
It's great. And the one with the race car noises and oh no, that's the next album, I think. Anyway, I like that record. It's kind of dear to me because it was like my first. Okay, now I'm getting music that's new, So that was fun.
So this. I know you moved to Toronto in, was it the late 70s or early 80s?
Yeah, something like that. No, probably, I think I was I was a student at York University in 81, I think. So yes, probably
and
1980.
Then your big phase of record collecting started.
It was coming together by then because I'd been away to college for 2 years before then. So bit by bit, I was getting, I had one milk carton full, and then I had two milk cartons full, and then it was getting heavier to transport. So I was branching out into a bunch of things, classic 60s, Stones and The Who and Bob Dylan and
Do you have any
some contemporary
specific
too.
Beatles memories of those Saturday mornings digging around at like Sam the Record Man?
I love that. Yeah,
That's how you ended up with all those imports that you've given me, I think.
Right.
Must be.
Yeah. But by that time, I probably had everything by the Beatles by that time. I'll tell you the saddest thing about when I was at my first year in college, of course, in university in Toronto, it was 1980, and so in December, the terrible tragedy happened, and I remember that night so well. It's, people remember the John F. Kennedy assassination. Well, I remember John Lennon assassination, and I was studying for exams because it was right before Christmas exam period. And staying up late with friends, and this news came on the radio. And coincidentally, I was studying with a friend who was kind of a John Lennon nut, not just a Beatle fan, but had John Lennon poster on her wall type of thing. So it was a really sad, we just stopped studying our papers and stayed up all night listening to radio and playing songs and stuff. A terribly sad night. So 40 years ago this year, could you believe it? I can't believe it.
40 years.
That's what it is. I mean, his whole life again, right? He died at 40, so... a sad anniversary coming up this year. But anyway, I remember that night as sort of a big Beatle memory that year, a sad one.
It's not even Julian is older than he ever was. Now Sean is older than
Oh, is that right? Yeah, right. Look at that. Yeah. Well, time flies, buddy.
Yeah.
I can promise you it does. So anyway, at that time I was expanding out into all kinds of other things, including solo music by Beatles, which I liked to a large degree too, bit by bit. Lennon albums, McCartney albums, and then all manner of other things that.
I noticed how you didn't say Ringo albums.
Well, I love the Ringo album. The Ringo album's a really fun record.
It's basically the closest
it's
thing
a
to
reunion.
a Beatle. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's charming, it's fun, nice songwriting, really good.
Goodnight Vienna is good too.
I like that song a lot, yeah. I remember acquiring one of them, like Rotogravure or
Ringo's
Bad Boy.
Review. Oh,
is that what it is? Yeah. I had one of those at a certain point in time, back when I was still at home, actually. I had it, and I think I lost it. And I remember playing it and thinking,
not a huge loss.
Not a huge loss. Oh, sorry, Ringo. We're just making jokes.
Peace and love, peace and love.
Peace and love, and broccoli and blueberries. But I remember listening to it and think, well, it's a Beatle. I've got to listen to this. And, there were tracks in there I enjoyed too. So, I mean, none of it's entirely disposable. But, of course, there were good and bad solo records. And McCartney's got some pretty crappy ones by times.
I don't know if I've told you this. Yeah. I think I might have. While talking with Mark Lewison, world's greatest Beatles historian,
indeed,
I told him, because we were talking about Rupert and the Frog song.
Oh, and, Rupert the bear.
Yeah. Oh,
is he a bear? I think he's a bear.
I thought he was a frog.
Well, he's an animal.
Yeah. But and then Give My Regards to Broad Street came up. And you tell the story first, and then I'll say what Mark Lewis said.
The story, yeah. Well, I mean, over my years of being a movie buff too, and seeing all kinds of films in theaters, I've only ever walked out twice, and once was from Flashdance, which as a young, late teen adult, I should have really enjoyed with all the sexy dancing and stuff. Yeah. But I just thought eventually, this is way too stupid. Let's get the hell out of here. My friend I was with, even I can't wait for the sexy stuff, enduring this acting, this quasi-acting.
Yeah.
And then the second movie ever that I walked out on was Give My Regards to Broad Streets, and again for pretty much the same reason. Yeah, Paul, I love you, buddy, but man, this is bad.
That's what happens when no one tells you no.
Yes, men all around. Exactly. Somebody should have said, "Wait a minute, why don't we write a script first?" Silly movie. And anyway, I don't want to bash him on that. I've never listened much to the re-recordings of the songs. Have you given those a listen? Are they interesting or good or?
That's the only McCartney album which I don't own a copy of, except for Wildlife. I don't own Wildlife.
Yeah, I have Wildlife on CD. I could loan that to you. It's an interesting record. Some stuff I like on there.
Is that the one with Sea Moon and?
I think it's got like Bip Bop and
Give Ireland Back to the Irish.
Well, that was, I think, a single only, which I always liked that song a lot. I'm a fan of that song.
I find it weird that both John and Paul had songs in the UK charts about Ireland at the same time.
Yeah, well, I think Paul was kind of a copycat maybe in that respect. I think Paul was trying to get some legitimacy as being a political activist man.
Yeah.
And it was but nevertheless, I like the sentiment. I think it's a pretty good song.
It was only a couple months after Bloody Sunday.
What's the one on there I like? I like the one that's just like all like sounds. Like it's a word like mumbo. Is that on Wildlife? I always like that one because to me it's a pun. It's like the words are unintelligible because he's mumbling them, so it's mumbo. I think that's the idea, and I think it's funny. I think it's good. And Wildlife's okay. Some good stuff on there.
Not his finest moment.
Not by far not. But when it comes to him, if I want to compile a collection of songs, and I've done that many times, I'm an old school, I'm an old man, so I still do it on CD. I put together collections on CD, and I'll pick and choose from records, and throughout the whole career, I find stuff I really like.
I find that
big barn bed, and the stuff
there's
on
good
every record.
McCartney stuff from every era, but there are a few significant dark ages.
Oh yeah, and whole sides I don't want to ever hear again. Yeah, for sure.
Like I never want to listen to Driving Rain ever again.
Oh, well, I'm not too down on that. There's stuff I like on there.
I don't really like the Memory Almost Full. Oh.
Right. I don't play it very often. I have to agree there. But again, it's all hit and miss. I'll pick one here, I'll pick one there, and you assemble that.
I'm a big fan of Flaming Pie, though.
Oh, it's I think maybe his best solo record. The Band on the Run or that one.
I have to go with Ram.
Yeah, I love Ram too. I love it. And there's a great double, reissue with extra stuff too. And I really like Ram a lot. Yeah, I agree there. Yeah. Although Uncle Albert Halsey is a little too goo-goo doll for me, but other than that, I am a fan.
I have a copy that came out a few years ago of Ram in mono.
Oh, that's cool.
That if it wasn't factory sealed, I would transfer you a copy.
Okay, yeah.
So you can enjoy.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I can't make those distinctions. I have old man ears. I can't make the distinction between stereo and mono anymore. So.
No, I know, but that's why you prefer the mono.
Well, that's true. Oh, very good point. Thank you. Yes, that's thoughtful. Yes, true.
So, next topic, since I think we've kind of run about that one. What did the Beatles mean to you back then, as opposed to what they mean to you now?
Well, that's an interesting question. Well, at the time, in the 70s, when I was discovering them, contemporary music, there was a lot of stuff I didn't care about. It was disco, there was a certain amount of heavy metal, certain kind of pop music.
Disco Duck.
Yeah, there was that.
Muskrat Love.
Look at that, you see? All-time classics. There should be an animal anthology of 1970s music.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was not inspiring to me or that interesting. And
nor should it be.
Nor should it be. And so when I discovered this music that was so fresh and vibrant and smart and beautiful, that was like a revelation and a kind of salvation, really. And having said that, a lot of that music now from the 70s, I do like. I like disco music now, and all kinds of stuff I kind of learned to like in retrospect. But at the time, it was a real breakthrough, and that's what it meant. It was happy, exciting stuff, and also, I learned to play guitar based on Beatles. So being so enthusiastic about their music and starting to learn to play guitar, again, thanks to your Aunt Alice, my sister Alice. My parents bought me a guitar, and they bought me a big, thick, like Beatles piano book, almost complete. It didn't have George's songs because they were a different publisher, but it was a book called Beatles Complete with the P-L-E-A-T, the old-fashioned kind of spelling.
Yeah.
And a very thick volume, mostly for piano. So for guitar player, you don't need all that note stuff because I didn't learn that note stuff. But what it had was the little chord diagrams, the six-string chord diagrams with the dots. And so really, I learned to play guitar, I learned chords, I learned chord sequences from that book of Beatles music. So that was very key to me, very significant at that time. And, I still love playing those songs, and that's how I learned to play guitar, was Beatles.
I mean, John, the reason why I picked up a guitar was because I wanted to learn how to play like John Lennon.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, he's a wonderful, fantastic rhythm and a brutal solo guitar player, so yeah. Very cool. Another thing with Beatles at the time, I discovered music books and becoming a music fan at the time and being in a bookstore in Montreal and seeing, there's a music section in this store. And the very first music book I bought, and I mean, I have hundreds of music books now, but the first book I ever bought was one called The Beatles, An Illustrated Record. By Roy Carr and Tony Tyler, I guess British.
You're not alone on that one. That was
critics.
many people's first.
Oh, is that right? Cool. This is the revised 1978 updated issue. I still have the copy, slightly torn and worn, but it was like my Bible for the longest time too, and tracking things down, and then other books followed. I have Mark Lewison's complete recording sessions one from the late '80s, and a lot of Beatle books and a lot of other books too. Like it's a library now of music books. But it was kind of neat to say, you can read about music, not just listen to it. It was another revelation, anyway.
Yeah.
At that time, so yeah.
But
that's what it meant.
What does it mean to you? What does the Beatles' music mean to you now?
Well, it's just such a part of the fabric of my soul. That sounds very pompous and poetic, but it's really true. That stuff's inside pompous. You. Well, thank you.
This is a judgment-free zone.
So very good, as it should be. You know, that stuff, it becomes who you are, the music that you love, and they're the foundation of the music that I came to love, pop music, and so they're real deeply embedded. Those songs just mean everything to me. I love hearing them, I love playing them and singing them, and I always will, and I always will try to pass on that joy to other people, including nephews, anybody who wants to hear about it. So it's an enduring
certainly passed it on to
fascination.
me.
Well, you're way surpassing me in your expertise and knowledge, and you're way ahead of me, pal.
You have to start somewhere, though.
Yeah, that's true. I became sort of an amateur musician over the years. I played in many bands with friends, and we always did Beatle covers. And what we always try to do is, my philosophy of being in a bar band is, if you're going to do covers, do obscure covers, because people who don't know them will think you made up a good song. And people who do know them will think you picked a really hip song. So it works both ways. Yeah. So we would cover songs like, I've Got a Feeling. Our band, we always did that one. We did Wait from Rubber Soul, which is quite an obscure little track to do. And we were good with the harmony singing, and we did good versions of these songs. And then one thing I'm extremely proud of, and I make this claim, there may be other people on planet Earth who can also make this claim, but when the anthology program aired, the first installment of the three. It was three, right?
Yes.
Back in the day. And what year was that, Ethan? I don't remember.
1995.
It was later than that. Okay, so in 95, we were all excited, us Beatle fans were all excited to watch this program. I taped it off of the TV with a VHS tape, and they played, of course, the big countdown to the new song at the end, Free as a Bird, which I think is a great song. I don't care what anybody ever says.
I love Free as a Bird.
Yeah, good for you.
I prefer Real Love, but...
Some people poo on them both, and I think that's terrible. I think it's a fantastic... It's
I've
all
heard
that you would
people
hope
say
for.
it's kind of like grave robbing.
No, that's idiotic. That's silly. It's done in complete conjunction, with every party that was had a right to be involved. So that's nonsense. But anyway, I sat down and I learned this song as well as I could from listening to it. The next night, my band, I was in a band then called LSQ, which doesn't mean anything, but that was our name of our band. We were playing at Clinton's Tavern, which has just closed recently. That's in Toronto, here on Bloor Street. And it's closed forever, unfortunately. But we were playing a gig that next night, which I guess would have been a Monday night. And I taught the guys in the band this song as quickly as I could before we played, and we performed it on stage 24 hours after it was aired on TV. So I don't know how many other bands did that, but
that reminds me of the story of Hendrix playing Sgt. Pepper.
That's right.
2 days after it came out in front of the Beatles at Brian Epstein's theater.
Or was it not even before? Like, didn't he hear acetate or something? Or?
No, it had just come out on the Friday, and he played it for them on the Sunday.
That must have been a mind-blowing thing. But anyway, so I'm very proud of that. I'm among the first people ever to cover that song. So we probably played a terrible version. I don't think we recorded it, so I have no idea what it sounded like, but we gave it our all.
So Are there any specific Beatles songs that, evoke certain memories, like vivid memories, when you hear a certain Beatles song?
Certainly many of them, I would say. Like I mentioned with the Tomorrow Never Knows. Let It Be is a song that can touch me a lot because, as you know, your grandmother's name was Mary. My mother Mary is an actual Mother Mary. So when I hear that, and sometimes if I've heard, Alice, your Aunt Alice was here in Toronto last year. We were out walking around together. We heard a busker playing that song. We both got quite emotional hearing that song being played, Yeah. I know for her it means a lot. Me, it means a lot too. So that's an example.
When we saw Mac Alive, he did Let It Be, and Mum started crying.
Oh, there you go. You see, there you go. So there's every family in the world who has a Mother Mary will react that way. But there's so many. I mean, good Lord, I remember one example is Rocky Raccoon, because that's one of the ones I learned to play on guitar early on. And you can play pretty rudimentary guitar and make it sound like what Paul was playing. So it was a nice moment where, hey, I really sound like a Beatles record. I'm playing the song.
That's the great thing about the Beatles. For people who want to play music, it's not complex. It's not that hard. Like, a lot of it is still from that Buddy Holly 3-chord mentality. Yeah. So it's easy to pick up a guitar and learn these songs. But again, it also provides, more challenge as you go on.
Right.
Like,
well, the listeners to this podcast may not realize you're a musician, Ethan. You're an aspiring guitar player who's getting to be really good, and you always impress me. You're learning all those riffs, like precisely how they're played. So you can play a lot of Beatles stuff on your guitar, which
thank you.
Even I never made the effort to learn them so accurately. So I'm impressed with how you do that. And as you say, the chords can be simple, but the arrangements can be pretty complicated and exciting.
Because if you want to play She Loves You, for instance, you can just play like
Strum it, you know?
Yeah, you can just play like G, A minor, and then D.
Work that out.
And then that's fine. But if you want to learn like George's lead part, it's way harder than that.
Gotcha. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
What is your favorite memory of being a Beatle? What is your favorite memory of being a Beatles fan, or a memory about the Beatles? See, that's the good thing about this podcast.
You can edit.
Well, I'm not even going to edit. It's just,
natural.
Things happen, and I'm not going to try and hide that.
Good for you. I agree with that too.
Yeah.
That's good. In fact, I may belch here just to emphasize that. There. I can give some examples because I will admit you did pre-feed me some of these questions. I was able to think about it in advance. And
don't pull back the facade.
That's right. It's the man at the microphone. Well, as I mentioned, listening to Revolver the first time, that was extremely exciting. But you know what? I also saw the original Beatlemania touring show.
Really?
And you'd have to tell me what year that was. 78? 79?
78, 79.
Right. Marshall Crenshaw, one of my favorite pop musicians, was John Lennon in that configuration. And so I saw that in Montreal. Yeah, I think Theatre Saint Denis in Montreal or something like that. And that was very exciting at the time because it really was a good copy. They did a great job. And then also here in Toronto over the years, there's a group that go by the name of sort of an assembly of musicians that do classic albums live.
Yeah.
You've heard of that, of course.
They do them here in Kitchener, too.
Okay, great.
They do them at Centre in the Square.
I've been to a couple of those that were fantastic. One was Rubber Soul and Revolver together in a sequence. That was great. And then they did the White Album, which was, and this is in a little club. I think it's the Phoenix Club in Toronto on Jarvis Street. And the White Album was fantastic. I think they had a little string quartet to do parts. They did Revolution No. 9 with a kind of a psychedelic acting out show on stage. They did the whole thing, start to finish, and super impressive how they took on every style of music on that record and recreated it. So that was awfully good. I enjoyed those nights. I've never seen any solo Beatles, though. You've seen Ringo, you've seen Paul. I've never seen anyone, so you're lucky.
Yeah, I saw Paul twice.
Yeah. Never have. I'm sad.
I've seen Ringo, although if I'm being fair, comparing him to Paul is not fair. Because seeing Ringo live...
Obviously, it's not the same.
Seeing Ringo live is a lot like not seeing Ringo live at all.
Interesting. Well, so many other musicians are on stage with him too, I think it's a fun evening. I think that's the intention.
It was fun, but it was a little frustrating to keep having to pull out my phone to go to setlist.com. It's like, they're playing another Toto song right now. When are they going to play a Ringo song?
I only know one Toto song, so there you go. I would have been lost too.
Yeah.
So that's my story, nephew. That's me and the Beatles, a lifelong, happy journey, and continue to be so. Maybe it'll be the last thought I have in my head will be the end when the day comes. That's what I would say. What else can I tell you?
I'm trying to think of... See, since this is the first podcast, so I'm still trying to figure out things to do.
Right. Well, you covered a lot there. That's a good sequence of questions.
Let me ask you some more.
I'll have to wrap up before too long. I have to say I can't.
No problem.
But certainly go ahead. And
I'll ask you some kind of spitfire ones.
All right.
Favorite Beatles album.
Favorite Beatles album. Well, as I say, Revolver, and then probably White Album after that. White Album.
Really?
Oh yeah. Oh good Lord. Yeah.
I thought you would have said like Rubber Soul.
Well, I absolutely love it, and of course I love Abbey Road, and of course I love everything. I love Hard Day's Night. I love it. I really love them all, except maybe Beatles for Sale is where it flags a little bit.
What?
Well, you see, there you go. So different.
I love that album.
Well, I don't despise it. Please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. But if I was going to rank them, I would put that last on the list. I would have to say
ahead of Yellow Submarine.
Well, that's not a real album.
Oh no, below Yellow Submarine.
I guess ahead or below, but I don't count Yellow Submarine as a real album.
Yeah,
I like the songs on it, but it's not an official release in some ways. And Abbey Road, I mean, my God, that's gigantic too. So I mean, I love them all.
Besides the aforementioned Tomorrow Never Knows, what is your favorite Beatles song?
Well, here's a weird choice. I like. I mean, everyone is near and dear. I'm a big fan of Martha, My Dear. Yeah, and I'll tell you why. I just love the arrangement. I love the piano part. And I tried to learn it when I was young. I was taking piano lessons way back in those early days when I was discovering these albums. And I actually figured it out on piano myself. I was very proud of myself. And it's pretty tricky to play because it's in the black keys, not just the white ones. And I played it for my friend John, who was my piano teacher at the time. And he said, "Oh, you're playing it much too complicated because my turntable was a little too fast. So I was playing it one half key sharp. So if you move it down one, it's much easier." So, but I really love that song. There's something about it. I don't know. It's warm. It's fun. It's beautiful. Playful. It's about a dog. It's a great song. Great song.
That was not the answer I was expecting.
Oh, well, there you go. What did you think I was going to say?
I don't know.
Oh, well.
Yeah, that's the good thing about the Beatles. They're the most popular band in the world, yet there are so many deep cuts.
Oh, well, nonstop. I know I sent to you one time, I made two, again, old man, I make CDs, a collection still, folks. Sorry about that. I don't stream on Spotify. And I made a couple. I think I sent you copies of the artwork of deep tracks, all deep tracks, 2 volumes. Like 60 songs or something. And I just adore all of them. So it's impossible to pick. I would pick a different song tomorrow if you asked me tomorrow.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
What is your least favorite Beatles song?
The same as everybody else. You know what it is. Come on, say it with me.
Are you going to say
Mr. Moonlight?
Oh.
Isn't that not a universal choice? I thought it would be.
Actually, I think it might be universal, like one of the least favorites. Yeah. But I will be the lone defender in this. I like Mr. Moonlight.
All right, good for you, poor kid.
I do kind of like it.
It's an odd little cover. I think it's that organ that throws me off.
Yeah,
it sounds like a roller rink on Quaaludes or something. But
roller rink on Quaaludes. They should have had that on the liner notes.
Yeah, that's right. And then I'm not a fan of Run for Your Life either. I think we discussed that before. And I don't like songs about people killing people and even jealous love murder songs. I'm not a fan because
what about the song
in the real
You
world
Can't
that
Do
stuff
That?
Actually happens. Yeah, that's probably badly dated. I love the riff though. I love the song.
The 12-string Rickenbacker.
Well, Lennon was a hard man. You read his biography. He wasn't always nice. People think he's the saint of peace and love.
He wasn't.
He wasn't. No. So he was flawed in many ways, and I'm glad he got over those flaws. It would seem. But anyway, it's a terrific rock song. Yeah.
Really, Mr. Moonlight.
I bet you 9 out of 10, knowledgeable Beatles fans would give that answer. That's my guess, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
Well, in this scenario, I don't care what the knowledgeable people, blah, 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 blah. I want to know what you think. Well, that's the concept of the podcast.
I'm giving you clear and straight, boy.
Oh, no, I know. Yeah. It's, for some reason, I think my least favorite Beatles song would have to be The Long and Winding Road.
Oh, yeah. I can sort of see that. It's maudlin in some ways.
Dull and plodding.
It's better without the orchestra. The orchestra makes it really overblown.
Yeah.
I can sort of get what you're saying, but
it's a travesty that For You Blue was the B-side, because that's such a great little song.
It's great. I don't know how super commercial it is, whether it would have been a hit potential, but I do like it. Yeah,
I always lump For You Blue and Old Brown Shoe together.
They've got the same kind of groove, don't they? Kind of a loping kind of groove there.
Old Brown Shoe is one of my favorite Beatles songs.
Oh, is that right? That's cool. That's good. I like that song too. I like them. I like George's songs. We're going right back to the second album, to the Don't Bother Me. I'm a fan of that song all the way.
I just gave the Wonderwall music soundtrack a listen the other day.
Okay, I've never heard it.
It's
pioneering electronica, isn't it?
No, that's the next one. There's a lot of sitar. There's a lot of sitar.
Okay.
It's very trippy. It's very weird, but I like it.
Right.
I had no idea what was going on.
When we're all free to roam again, I'll come over and listen to it at your place.
Yeah.
Ethan, I'm going to have to wrap up soon, my dear nephew.
All right.
So I'll give you one more question for the night. Any exciting, unique, weird? What do you got to ask?
Um,
I'm looking through my list of things I wanted to mention here too, and I think I've got it. I think I mentioned everything I had in mind that I wanted to say about the Beatles.
Okay.
Yeah.
What in the future are you looking, or do you want to see come out of the Apple vaults?
Well, here's a good example. A good, authoritative Let It Be movie. That's never been happening, has it?
It could be coming this year.
They should do something with that. They should. I'm sure there's a lot of hesitation. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
It's Peter Jackson doing it.
Oh, no kidding. That's weird.
He's doing the same kind of thing he did on They Shall Grow Not Old with the restoration.
I watched that recently. I watched that World War I documentary. Yeah. I think that's possibly the most amazing documentary I've ever seen. So I think that's fantastic.
It's the same team.
Oh, that's interesting. So they're going to reconfigure it and re-edit and stuff. Okay. That's
some people are afraid of it becoming a little,
too hagiographic or
rewriting history. So to speak.
Right. Yeah. Well, I was reading some McCartney stuff recently where he said, the movie picked all the worst moments, and there were good moments as well, and he can recall them vividly, and maybe they're on film too. Maybe the editors decided not to use those. So,
but I don't know why someone would intentionally try and make a negative movie.
Right. Yeah, good point. Yeah. Anyway, I look forward to seeing that. That would be great.
Because all of the studio logs of the Let It Be sessions, they're all available, and I read through some of the transcripts. And it's not like they were happy.
Right.
They weren't like snapping and bitchy at each other, but there was such a layer of passive aggressiveness,
animosity.
Yeah.
Probably just tired of the whole thing. I know George was extremely tired of the whole thing.
That's why he left.
Yeah. So and fair enough. They'd been through a lot and had a lot of issues between them. So. But that would be good to see. I'd like to see it. There's probably some really nice moments.
We should go see it together when it comes out.
That would be marvelous. Let's hope they send out and put it in the theaters.
They'll put it in the theaters. They put the last one, for like a day or two. They put 8 days a week.
Oh, that Tom Hanks one, or
Ron Howard.
Ron Howard. Or did Tom Hanks narrate, or what did I say? Tom Hanks. Anyway, Ron Howard. Yeah.
I don't think Tom Hanks was involved.
Had anything to do with it? Well, he should have. Did you ever see his little rock and roll movie? What was that movie?
That Thing You Do.
Yeah, That Thing You Do. Yeah.
I love that movie.
It was a good movie, and the band that does that movie. What was the band? Was it Fountains of Wayne? No, wasn't that?
I don't know. I know the guy who wrote That Thing You Do, who was in Fountains of Wayne, passed away not too long ago.
I'll tell you an interesting story. One of your cousins, my first cousins, or your first cousin once removed, Kurt Bryant, down in New York State, dear friend and dear music lover as well. He grew up in New Jersey, just outside of New York City, across the river. And the town of Wayne, New Jersey is there, and Fountains of Wayne is a business that operated in this town. He remembers driving by it all the time as a kid. So that's where they got their name, from this business, I guess, sold fountains, I presume, and that's the band name. And your cousin knew all about it way before there ever was a band. So.
Really?
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
That is cool.
It is pretty cool. Ethan, it's late. Let's wrap it up, son.
It is late. It is 11:54 p.m. as we record this.
Yeah. Well, it's been a great pleasure. This has been really fun. And
The pleasure is all mine.
You're going to have wonderful success with this project. I think you're going to be a great interviewer, and it'll be really interesting to hear other people's responses and stories, too. So I look forward to listening to it.
I hope it goes well.
And I love the artwork you created. That is brilliant. You're a real graphic artist, man. You're way ahead of your time. You're going to, you follow that field in life, you're going to have tremendous success, I think. So
thank you.
Wonderbar.
Pick it up after you.
Right. Well, this was Fab, man. Totally gear.
Fab gear and all those other pimply hyperboles.
Very good.
If I may quote George Harrison from A Hard Day's Night.
That impresses me that you did that. We didn't even mention that movie. I adore that movie. I think it's one of the top 10 movies.
We have to watch it together sometime.
That would be really good. That'd be really good.
Or Help.
Yeah, which I like too. But Help is the template for music videos. Is what I find. It's fantastic that way. So.
All right. So I think that about wraps it up for this session. Uncle Paul, thank you so much for coming on.
Tremendous pleasure. Thanks so much for picking me first as your first interview.
Well,
and I look forward to hearing the rest.
It seems fitting, full circle.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
And we'll see you next time on another episode of Fans on the Run.
So long, buddy.
So long, Uncle Paul.
Fans on the Run is produced by Ethan Alexanian. Additional voiceovers by Richard Phillip. This has been a Showtown production.